The moment Princess Leonor silenced doubts. There are moments in history when doubt hangs heavier than expectation. Moments when a nation watches not just with curiosity, but with quiet scrutiny. And for Princess Leonor, one such moment arrived beneath the bright lights and unblinking cameras of modern Spain. The headlines had been relentless in the years leading up to it. Too young, too sheltered, too symbolic. Critics questioned whether the heir to the Spanish throne could truly carry the weight of a centuries-old institution into an uncertain future. Supporters believed in her preparation, but even they wondered when the defining moment would come, the moment that would separate ceremony from conviction. Spain is no stranger to history. From the rise and fall of empires to democratic transformation, it is a nation that has endured complexity. And at the center of its constitutional framework stands the monarchy, embodied today by King Felipe VI. His reign has been marked by reform, discipline, and a deliberate effort to restore credibility to the crown. But even as he stabilized the institution, the question lingered quietly in the background: what about the future? That future has a name: Leonor. From childhood, she has been raised not simply as a daughter of the royal household, but as the future Queen of Spain. Her education was carefully structured, her public appearances deliberate, her military training rigorous. Yet for all the preparation, public perception is rarely shaped by resumes. It is shaped by moments. And then, that moment came. It was not staged as a spectacle. It was not designed to be dramatic. But in its simplicity, it became powerful. Standing before a distinguished audience, leaders, dignitaries, and citizens, Leonor delivered words that would ripple far beyond the hall. Her voice was steady, not rehearsed to perfection in a mechanical way, but measured with purpose. She spoke not as a teenager reading prepared lines, but as a young woman aware of responsibility. Her tone carried clarity, but more importantly, conviction. Observers noticed the shift immediately. There was no tremor of uncertainty. No visible hesitation. She spoke of duty, of unity, of constitutional commitment. She acknowledged Spain's diversity, its languages, its regions, its challenges, not as political talking points, but as realities she understood she would one day serve. For years, some had questioned whether a young heir raised in privilege could genuinely connect with the everyday concerns of citizens. Yet in that speech, Leonor did something subtle but profound. She did not try to appear relatable. She appeared responsible, and responsibility commands respect. The silence that followed that defining speech did not mean the scrutiny disappeared. In many ways, it intensified. Because once doubts are quieted, expectations rise. In the days that followed, commentators across Spain revisited old assumptions. Television panels replayed clips. Newspapers dissected phrasing. Analysts compared her delivery to previous landmark speeches by King Felipe VI during moments of national tension. The comparisons were inevitable, but something subtle had shifted. They were no longer asking whether she could handle responsibility. They were analyzing how she would shape it. For Princess Leonor, this was not a moment to celebrate publicly. It was a moment to continue working. Because silencing doubt once is symbolic. Sustaining confidence is strategic. Behind palace walls, preparation never stops. Briefings deepen. Constitutional frameworks are reviewed. Historical precedents are studied not as stories, but as lessons. The Spanish crown operates within a democratic structure, carefully defined, deliberately limited, and constantly observed. To lead within that structure requires not only ceremony, but intellectual discipline. And Leonor's evolution began to show in the way she approached subsequent engagements. Her posture remained measured, but her interactions grew more fluid. She listened longer. She responded with nuance. Whether meeting youth organizations, military officials, or cultural leaders, there was a growing sense of assurance, not rehearsed confidence but familiarity with responsibility. Spain itself is a mosaic. Different regions carry distinct identities, languages, and political sensitivities. The monarchy's role is not to dominate those identities but to stand above division, symbolizing unity without suppressing diversity. In this delicate balance, every gesture matters. When Leonor visited communities outside Madrid, observers paid attention to her language choices, her tone, her attentiveness. They noticed how she acknowledged local traditions. They observed how she stood slightly back when appropriate, allowing regional voices to take the spotlight. Leadership, in this context, is often about restraint. And restraint is a powerful signal. Internationally, European monarchies are navigating generational transition. Across the continent, heirs are stepping into more visible roles. In that broader landscape, Leonor's development is part of a larger story, the modernization of constitutional crowns in the 21st century. But Spain's history adds unique weight. The monarchy was restored in a period of democratic transformation. It became a symbol of stability during fragile years. Under King Felipe VI, reform and transparency became central themes. For Leonor, inheriting the throne one day will mean inheriting both its symbolism and its expectations. This is why that defining speech mattered so deeply. It was not about eloquence alone. It was about continuity of principle. After that moment, younger generations began engaging with her image differently. On social platforms, discussions shifted from curiosity about her personal life to interest in her preparation. Students debated her role in civic education classes. Teachers referenced her speeches in discussions about constitutional responsibility. Representation matters, especially for young citizens who often feel distant from institutions. Seeing someone of their generation step confidently into national duty reframes the monarchy from relic to reality. Yet Leonor's greatest challenge will not be ceremonial days filled with applause. It will be navigating moments of national tension, economic pressures, political disagreements, social debates amplified by digital platforms. In those moments, composure must move beyond symbolism and become action. The second phase of silencing doubt is not about a single speech. It is about consistency. Consistency in tone, consistency in neutrality, consistency in demonstrating that the crown exists to serve the constitutional order, not overshadow it. There is also a personal dimension rarely discussed openly. Growing into leadership while still discovering your own identity requires emotional intelligence. The line between private self and public duty is thin, and often unforgiving. And yet, Leonor's demeanor suggests awareness of that boundary. She appears neither detached nor overly familiar. She understands that accessibility does not mean informality, and authority does not require coldness. This equilibrium is rare, and it is learned. As she continues her military formation and institutional training, the visual symbolism becomes stronger. Uniforms represent discipline, ceremonial events represent tradition, academic pursuits represent intellect. Together, they form a composite image of preparedness. Critics may still exist. In any democracy, institutions are debated. But the tone has shifted from dismissal to discussion. And discussion implies legitimacy. Perhaps what resonates most is not that Leonor appears perfect, but that she appears serious. Serious about study, serious about protocol, serious about Spain. In a world often saturated with spectacle, seriousness can feel refreshing. The monarchy does not operate through executive power. Its influence is moral and symbolic. That makes credibility its most valuable currency. Each appearance either strengthens or weakens that currency. So far, Leonor's trajectory suggests strengthening. When historians look back decades from now, they may identify that first defining speech as a turning point. Not because it transformed policy, but because it transformed perception. And perception shapes stability. The second part of her journey is unfolding now, in quieter rooms, in structured briefings, in disciplined routines. The cameras capture moments, but growth happens between them. Spain is watching, not anxiously as before, but attentively. Because the doubts that once echoed loudly have softened into something else, expectation mixed with cautious optimism. And that may be the clearest sign of all that a transition, when it comes, will feel not abrupt, but prepared. Royal strength is not a single performance. It is sustained resolve. And as Princess Leonor continues stepping forward, measured, composed, deliberate, the silence of former doubt grows louder than any applause ever could. With doubt no longer dominating the narrative, a new phase quietly began, the phase where expectation turns into examination. For Princess Leonor, the third stage of her evolution is less about proving readiness and more about defining identity. Because once a future monarch demonstrates competence, the next question naturally follows: what kind of queen will she become? Spain's constitutional framework is clear. The monarch reigns but does not govern. Yet within those boundaries lies immense symbolic influence. Tone matters. Timing matters. Silence can matter just as much as speech. This is where maturity deepens. Observers began noticing something subtle in Leonor's appearances after her defining moment. There was a growing ease in her movements, not casualness, but comfort within responsibility. When greeting dignitaries, she maintained steady eye contact. When standing beside King Felipe VI, she no longer looked like a student observing a lesson. She looked like a successor absorbing experience. And succession, in monarchies, is as much psychological as it is constitutional. Spain's history carries chapters of uncertainty, political transitions, economic strain, regional debates. The monarchy's endurance has depended on its ability to project stability above those currents. For Leonor, the challenge is not to reinvent that principle, but to embody it for a generation raised in an entirely different era. This generation grew up online. It questions institutions openly. It values transparency and accountability. If the crown is to remain relevant, it must resonate without abandoning tradition. Leonor appears to understand that balance instinctively. During public engagements with young people, she listens attentively before speaking. Her responses are concise but thoughtful. She avoids grand declarations. Instead, she emphasizes shared responsibility, a subtle yet powerful reframing of royal authority in a democratic society. There is also the visual evolution. Her presence in military settings, participating in structured training, reinforces a message that monarchy is not merely ceremonial. Discipline becomes visible, commitment becomes tangible. Images of her in uniform resonate far beyond symbolism, they suggest alignment with national institutions that safeguard the country's stability. But strength is tested not only in structured environments. It is tested in unpredictability. There have been moments, small but revealing, when events did not unfold perfectly. Slight logistical delays, unexpected interactions, minor disruptions. In those instances, Leonor's reaction has remained consistent: calm acknowledgement, measured adaptation, forward focus. Leadership often reveals itself in unscripted seconds. And those seconds accumulate. International observers have begun to include her name in discussions about the future of European monarchies. Across the continent, heirs are stepping into greater visibility. Each brings unique style and context, but they share one challenge: modernizing perception without diluting heritage. Leonor's approach so far leans toward quiet authority rather than charismatic spectacle. She does not dominate a room through flamboyance. She steadies it through composure. That distinction matters deeply in Spain, where political polarization can intensify debates around national identity. A monarch perceived as restrained and constitutional becomes a neutral anchor. The third phase of silencing doubt is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Each well-delivered address, each disciplined ceremony, each respectful engagement with diverse communities. Together, they form a pattern. Patterns create trust, and trust builds longevity. There is also the human reality of growth. Leonor is still young. Her worldview is expanding. Her experiences, academic, military, diplomatic, are shaping not just her public persona, but her internal compass. The public sees fragments. The preparation continues privately. Within the royal household, mentorship likely remains central. King Felipe VI's reign has emphasized institutional integrity and constitutional clarity. That blueprint becomes a living case study for his daughter. But Leonor's leadership will ultimately carry her own imprint. The question is not whether she will mirror her father. It is how she will adapt his principles to a future that may look very different from today. Spain faces evolving challenges: economic transformation, technological acceleration, environmental concerns, shifting geopolitical alliances. While the monarch does not craft policy, the crown's symbolic alignment with national resilience becomes crucial during times of change. Leonor's emerging image suggests steadiness rather than activism, presence rather than pronouncement. This approach reinforces the monarchy's role as a stabilizing institution rather than a competing voice in political discourse. And stability, in uncertain times, becomes invaluable. Public opinion, once cautious, now appears more measured. Discussions are less about capability and more about timing. When will she assume more responsibilities? How will her role expand? What initiatives might she champion within constitutional limits? These are no longer skeptical questions. They are anticipatory ones. The third part of her journey reveals something profound. Doubt fades not because it is defeated in confrontation, but because it loses relevance. When competence becomes consistent, skepticism grows quiet. There is still distance to travel before a coronation day ever arrives. Years of preparation remain, yet the foundation feels different now, less fragile, more assured. The cameras will continue to watch. Analysts will continue to interpret. Spain will continue to evaluate. But the atmosphere has shifted. Where there was once hesitation, there is now measured confidence. Where there was once speculation, there is now structured expectation. Royal strength, as it unfolds in this phase, is not about dramatic declarations. It is about reliability, the ability to show up, prepared and composed, again and again. And perhaps that is the clearest sign that Princess Leonor's defining moment was not an isolated event, it was the beginning of a sustained transformation. A transformation from heir under scrutiny to future sovereign under anticipation. The third chapter is still being written. But one truth is already evident. The silence of doubt has been replaced by the quiet weight of destiny, and she is carrying it with steady hands. In the end, history rarely turns on noise. It turns on steadiness. What began as a single defining moment for Princess Leonor has grown into something larger than a speech, larger than a headline, larger than a viral clip. It has become a recalibration of perception. The doubts that once hovered so loudly have not vanished because they were argued down, they have faded because consistency replaced uncertainty. That is the true measure of royal strength. Spain does not need theatrics from its future monarch. It does not need spectacle. It needs continuity anchored in discipline. It needs a steady constitutional presence capable of standing above political turbulence without becoming entangled in it. And that is precisely what Leonor has begun to embody. There will be greater tests ahead. Moments of national tension, times when the country looks to the crown for reassurance rather than rhetoric. When that day comes, the memory of her early composure will matter. The discipline seen in her training will matter. The seriousness in her voice will matter. Because leadership is not improvised in crisis. It is prepared long before it is required. Under the guidance of King Felipe VI, the Spanish monarchy has emphasized transparency, constitutional loyalty, and modern relevance. Leonor represents the continuation of that trajectory, not as a replica, but as an evolution shaped by her own generation's realities. She stands at the intersection of tradition and transformation, old enough to understand history, young enough to reflect the future. That balance is rare. The moment she silenced doubts was never about proving perfection. It was about proving presence. The ability to occupy a room with quiet authority. The ability to speak without overreaching. The ability to reassure without demanding applause. And perhaps most importantly, the ability to grow under observation without losing composure. Spain's monarchy, like any enduring institution, depends not on titles but on trust. Trust accumulates slowly. It is strengthened by discipline, reinforced by humility, and sustained by service. Leonor's journey is far from complete. In many ways, it has only begun. But something essential has already taken root: credibility. Credibility that she understands the gravity of what awaits her. Credibility that preparation is not symbolic, but real. Credibility that when her time comes, transition will feel natural rather than uncertain. The cameras will continue to flash. The commentaries will continue to circulate. The expectations will continue to rise. But the tone has changed. The conversation is no longer, "Is she ready?" It has become, quietly and steadily, "She is preparing." And preparation is power. Royal strength is not measured in crowns or ceremonies. It is measured in the calm before responsibility fully arrives. It is measured in how a future leader carries expectation long before wearing authority. In that sense, the moment Princess Leonor silenced doubts was not just a milestone in her life, it was a signal to a nation. A signal that continuity is secure. That discipline is present. That the future of the Spanish crown stands steady. And when history looks back on this chapter, it may not remember every word she spoke. But it will remember the composure. Because sometimes, the strongest statement a future queen can make is not through force, but through unwavering, unmistakable presence. That is royal strength.